Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Is this on? Testing 1, 2. Awesome. Happy Wednesday, great evening, and welcome to the NABE of Harlem here in Manhattan, New York. Thank you for your patience. We're excited to be in space together today. We are facilitating a hybrid event, and so we have advised our AV team here at Columbia Law School to go live so that we can begin tonight's program. I have the distinct honor and privilege, first and foremost, of being Jory Francois, a member of the team at the New York Urban League, and really excited to be working with our partners at the Office of the Manhattan Borough President's Office. I'll give a moment for my colleague to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. So excited to see you all. Hi, everybody. So many familiar faces. My name is Keisha Smith, and I am a member of the Manhattan Borough President's Office. And once again, we thank you so much for joining us. Super excited for you guys to get all of the awesome information that we have for you tonight.
Awesome. So to kind of set the stage for this evening, we thought it very important to bring our community together in a space where we could have an open dialogue around the issue of cannabis licensing, as well as the systemic and historic challenges that we faced as a community. We thank you for being vulnerable, we thank you for being open, and we thank you for being committed to not only educating yourselves, but uplifting our community as a collective. The New York Urban League is an over 100-year-old civil rights organization dedicated to the uplift and empowerment of our communities. We achieve this mission through programs, services, and advocacy. In partnership with our National Urban League, we recognize that the marijuana legalization effort to lift constraints that have criminalized Black and brown people, to lift barriers and which have blocked opportunity and social parity for our communities is paramount, which is why we're excited to facilitate this conversation here today. Before we get to our esteemed panelists, we'd like to take an opportunity to have welcome remarks from our leadership at the New York Urban League, under the fearless leadership of our president and CEO, who also tirelessly works as the interim chairperson of the Civilian Complaint Review Board, working with our legal system and the NYPD to review those cases which challenge our community at large. I welcome our fearless leader, Ms. Arva R. Rice, to bring us greetings.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, good evening. It's wonderful to see you all. I'm going to be brief with my remarks because I see our Manhattan Borough President is here, and I'm sure he is on one of many stops this evening. I want to thank you all for being a part of this conversation. As you heard from Jory, I have the privilege of serving as the interim chair of a group called the Civilian Complaint Review Board. And all that group does all day, every day, is take complaints from citizens who feel like they've had negative interactions with the police and are able to file those complaints. And too many times, those complaints come from, I smelled marijuana. And so because I smelled marijuana, I can pull you over, I can search your vehicle, I can have this conversation with you just because of that. And as a result, the use of marijuana has been so criminalized in our communities, and it has led to the over-criminalization, people being sent off, and people having records as a result of this. And so we are so excited to have this conversation because it is about flipping that narrative, and it is about talking about ways in which we can benefit from the cannabis industry. And so we want to thank you all for being part of this conversation. I encourage you all to ask as many questions as possible, interact with the panelists, and to make those connections as you further build and develop and find ways to move this this entity that has been so destructive to our community to actually serve as an economic engine and to help to spur and support creativity, entrepreneurship, and innovation within our communities. Thank you so much for coming.
Hi, everyone. I have the esteemed pleasure of being Keisha Sutton James, Jory Francois. Honestly, I have the pleasure of serving as Deputy Manhattan Borough President under the leadership of Borough President Mark Levine, and alongside co-Deputy Borough President Aya Keefe, who is always fiercely on her phone doing something. I have a number of pleasures tonight, but the first one is to get to introduce my boss. I'm very fortunate, to be able to work for someone who's so focused in this space and so focused on equity. We have three main pillars that from a policy perspective that our office is focused on, and equity is one of them. And we're really making a big push in this space. So I will let him tell you more about kind of how we're thinking about this and some of what we're focusing on. That's it. I will just call Borough President Mark Levine up to the stage.
Thank you. Applaud again for Keisha Sutton James, Deputy Borough President, and Deputy Borough President Aya Keefe. And my goodness, Arva Rice is one of the most effective leaders we have in New York City. And I am so grateful. We have been friends for a lot of years before she was famous. But you crystallized in very powerful language just now, both what we're working against, this era of criminalization, and also the opportunity. And we have the chance to do something really big here, to create a whole new industry. We're at the dawn of a new industry for New York State and for New York City, with the potential to help empower the very communities that have been most brutalized by the so-called war on drugs. But I also think we have to be really sober about the fact that in almost every single state where they have rolled out a legal cannabis regime, they have failed to live up to the promises of equity. Almost every state has paid lip service to it, but in my opinion, they haven't lived up to the promise. We have to get it right in New York. We have to. The stakes are so high. This has to be the place that finally gets it right. And it's not easy. Starting a business, any business, is very difficult. The vast majority of businesses fail in any sector, whether it's a restaurant, anything. And running a regulated business is even tougher. And running a regulated business in a space where there is an ambiguous legal status vis-a-vis the federal government is even harder. It is hard to get access to capital. We have to work on that. It's hard to know how you prepare your business plan. We have to work on that. We have to support the very businesses that have the potential to emerge now. And that's really this is what tonight is about. And I think what is motivating and inspiring so many of us. We have to support these emerging entrepreneurs, many of whom are a legacy in this business, and we have to support them in this transition. That's not going to be easy. We can do it. And we have an amazing lineup of experts tonight that I am so grateful have come out to give some of their time. Can I shout them out? Yes, I'm going to do that. We have Chris Alexander, Executive Director of the New York State Office of Cannabis Management. Thank you so much, Chris. We have Ruben McDaniel, who's a member of the Cannabis Control Board. Applaud for all of them, because they're amazing. We have Barrington Rutherford, former Senior Vice President of Real Estate and Community Integration at Cresco Labs, and the board member of the New York Urban League. Thank you, Barrington. We have Tamika Saul from Davis Polk, who's a sponsored staff attorney here at Columbia Law School. And we have Saul Guerrero, thank you. Saul Guerrero, who is the lead cannabis organizer at the Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union, AKA RWDSU. And we also have a last-minute addition, Damian Fagan. Whisper in my ear, please. Why don't you just say it in the mic?
And we also have, finally, I apologize. I hope this is a little bit comedic. Damian Fagan in the center, board member of the New York State Growers and Processors Association, plus a million other things.
My goodness. My goodness.
He also teaches at Medgar Evers and several other titles. Sorry.
I don't think you could have a bigger collection of brain power on this emerging industry. An amazing panel. I am so thrilled that all of you have come out. We know there's a lot of work to do. We have an opportunity now for the public to give comment, to shape the final structure here, and I hope our panelists will tell you tonight how you can do that, because many of you who are on the ground in this sector, either as legacy or just as community members, we want your input into the state's process. And I want you to know that those of us who are here in the Borough President's office, we are in this for the long haul. We're going to help you navigate the complex regulatory structure. We're going to help you navigate the real estate angle, the zoning angle, all the time, place, and manner questions. We want to be here for you as a resource to ensure that Uptown Manhattan, we're in West Harlem, that West Harlem does not get left behind, that we do right by the communities that have been brutalized by the war on drugs. This is our opportunity. We're going to do right by you. We have to. We can accept nothing less. I want to also acknowledge that you have some amazing community boards uptown. Community Board 9, where we are right now, has been a leader on this from day one. Community Board 10, Community Board 12, and many others. We're doing this all over the borough. This is, I think, the third that I've been a part of. I think the second that our office has sponsored. We're not going to stop. We're going to continue to get the information out. So without further ado, I think I'm going to bring you back up, Keisha, to take us on to the next segment of the program. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's learn together tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Borough President. I wanted to make sure before we jump into this discussion, I want to make sure to thank all the partners on behalf of the Urban League and our office. I want to make sure to thank Congressman Espaillat's office. I saw there, yes, there you are. I saw Shauna Marks from Congressman Espaillat's office. Thank you so much for helping to support. I think that Barry Weinberg, chair of Community Board 9, is here. I think Eleazar Bueno from Community Board 12 may be here. Of course, I want to make sure to thank Columbia Law School, and in particular, Tamika Saul, for bringing us into this space and the food and all the things that they are doing. Another partner, Phi Beta Sigma fraternity, and I want to make sure I've got everything. Cicely Harris is, who is the community board chair for 10, is here represented by Charles Johnson, chair of the Public Safety Committee. I want to make sure to shout him out, as well as co-chairs of the Cannabis Task Force for CB9, Miriam Aristi Ferrer and Monique Harden Carrero. Thank you all so much for all the work that you've done in this space and for your support in putting this event together. So with that, I've got all of our thank yous in, because we would not be here without all the partners that make this happen. With that, we are moving in more of a, of course, all panelists, you're welcome to kind of assist one another, if you will, but we're kind of going in an order where we have, first up is Chris Alexander and Ruben McDaniel, who have already been introduced, and they are going to be talking about the regulations, timeline, so forth and so on. I'm looking at an old, I'm looking at an old run of show, so I don't have that part in here. I apologize. But Chris and Ruben, would you please get us started? Thank you.
Yeah, sure thing. Can everybody hear me? All right. Well, first of all, thank you all for coming out today. It is, quite literally every day I got to pinch myself. I've been working on this issue for a very, very long time, and to be, in this role that I'm in now, and to be able to reach out and see communities and folks who are interested in learning more, who are broken through the stigma, who want to get involved and engaged in the industry that we're trying to build is just, constantly motivating. So I just want to thank you all and shout you all out for coming here today and your continued advocacy. So me and Ruben are tasked with a pretty tall task, almost as tall as him, of creating and implementing the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act. It has been really an inspiring task, but one that has required quite a bit of input from stakeholders, from organizers, as well as from folks like Barrington, who have quite a bit of experience in the industry. New York is not first to take on this task, to start this journey. We have the benefit of learning from several other states who've tried to make sure that they were building an equitable and accessible market. We have learned from those mistakes. Our law reflects those lessons. And now, as regulators, we're trying to put those lessons to practice. And so, we are moving incredibly quickly. And I know that folks seem to look at that enactment date of March 31st, 2021 as the date when it all began and wondering why the market is not established. But, just keeping in mind that, we didn't get appointed until September 1st. And then we also have to build up an entire state agency while drafting the rules for the road and making sure that we don't make the same mistakes that others have made in trying to do what we're doing. So I want to, just start there before we dive in. But want to really highlight in this moment the first step that we've taken as an office, really through our Seeding Opportunity Initiative. It's an initiative unlike any other in the country, where we've centered folks who've been impacted by cannabis prohibition and folks who are identifying as small growers who are operating across the state, have participated in the existing market, the hemp market, and are now going to be providing the first cannabis products, adult use products in the state. So Ruben, I'm going to kick it to you now for introduction, but also, a lot of this was really your brainchild. Giving him the praise now because it's important that we recognize leaders who are willing to step out when others aren't. And a lot of the work that we've done in these early months to establish the foundation for the market is because I was fortunate enough to have a partner in state government who was willing to lead and to do things that others weren't willing to do. So shout out to Ruben McDaniel.
Well, thank you, Chris. Thank you very much. It's great to be here tonight. In addition to being on the Office of Cannabis Management, I'm also the president and CEO of DASNY, the Dormitory Authority of the State of New York. We're the biggest bond issuer in the country. We also do a lot of construction work. A lot of facilities on Columbia campus have been financed by bonds that DASNY issued. But I am a 30-plus year investment banker by training. I finance very large projects and very small projects, but have a passion for helping minority and small businesses get proper capitalization to be in whatever market they choose to be in. And so when the cannabis initiative came about 2 or 3 years ago, I was really focused on, we have a bill that's very favorable to social equity applicants becoming licensees and becoming great business owners and being part of the great industry. We're not the first state to have thought about this, and the borough president made commentary. Other states have failed. And so I really thought about and studied a lot, why did other states fail so dramatically in implementing the programs for the social equity applicants? And the real biggest issue has been access to capital. And some people talk about capital just as money, but it's capital that is timely, that is cost effective, and is able to be used to really build a business in a way that is productive. And so what other states have done is said, okay, everybody start the same line, we have these great initiatives, but the capital doesn't follow. Some easy examples. Illinois has sold, Barrington, $2 billion worth of capital, not many from African-American or minority businesses, zero maybe, yep. Los Angeles has a big social equity program. 3 companies have been in business. Most of it's because of access to capital. So what we have done, both programmatically through regulation as well as through policy, is begin to create programs that allow entrepreneurs who have been disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs to have access to capital, have access to leases, have access to information, and have all of that in the same time frame as the majority counterparts. And I think that's an important note. This board and this office have been committed to making sure that we don't have other people with more money and more experience and more background and more backing be the first ones to the business as they rush to market. But we do have pressure to get to market. And so what we've done through this Seeding Opportunities program is made sure that our impacted farmers who've been in the hemp business are out now starting to grow cannabis in a legal way in the state of New York. We have begun raising a fund of $200 million to provide capital for businesses on the retail dispensary side to go out and build their businesses. We have begun identifying locations. We know that finding leases is a problem. May be accessible for some of us to get leases in parts of the city, but Union Square, Barclays Center, others have really been hard for us. And so this program also allows has the state be a leader in securing those leases so that our entrepreneurs can have great dispensary locations to begin facing the customer. And so that's critically important. We're also going to finance a good part of the capital on good rates and good terms in a way that people can access that capital, so that as the licensing process goes through the summer into the fall, we will be in a parallel track to make sure that these dispensaries are ready to be open so that the licensees can be in the market in a great way, in a way that cost of capital and capital structure is effective. And so we're really excited about this opportunity. Some people are skeptical, some people are concerned, some people don't have patience. I get all of that. And rightfully so, because we've talked about this a lot before. Access to capital, do these programs, we get in front. If there's any good news about the 5-member board, one of the members, myself, has seen all these problems before in other industries, and we're not gonna let it happen here. We will take our time, we will get it right, but we'll make sure that access to capital is there early. So very committed to that. Chris has been a great partner. I look forward to working with you and all of you as partners on how we can get people who want to be in all aspects of the business, cultivation, processing, dispensaries, even people who want to be in the workforce, really working hard on that. I've been working with New York City EDC on some of their programs of workforce development. This is a big industry, 30 to 50,000 jobs, $3 to $4 billion early in the industry, up to $7 to $8 billion down the road. We want to make sure that social equity applicants, particularly those who've been harmed by the war on drugs, get access to this industry. Thank you.
Yeah. So much of this, as I said, has been, learning from the lessons of others, right? And I think identifying these barriers for entry has been the constant struggle. Identifying the challenges that others have faced has been the constant focus. And so, what we have laid out through this investment program and the Seeding Opportunity Initiative writ large is really making sure that those who otherwise would have been left behind and left out have a seat at the table and a way to meaningfully participate in the industry that we're building. That's our goal. And it's not our goal, just like the borough president said, it's not our goal today. It's not our goal tomorrow. That is our goal. When folks ask us, and every time I do these talks, and I've been doing them for a very long time, there's always the ask of, is this going to be like every other thing? Is it going to be like every other government program? And when I want to tell folks, I want to point them to the legislative intent of that bill that we spent a lot of time writing, a lot of sleepless nights fighting over and negotiating. And the bill that still came across is the most progressive cannabis legalization bill in the country. In that legislative intent, it is very clear what the goal of this program is, and that is really our marching orders as an agency and as a board, and that's what we remain focused on. So I want to give a little bit of background about CARD, the Conditional Adult Use Retail Dispensary Program, give you a little bit more on the timeline and rollout of license applications. But I wanted to start with the framing and making sure that everybody understands, as my mic goes out, is it in? You got me? That this is the first of the programs that we're trying to build and roll out. This is just our first step. We're talking about 100 to 200 dispensaries that we're trying to build out. We're talking about a couple of small growers across the state. But this is just a first of our demonstrated commitment to making sure that, again, those who otherwise would have been left out or left behind have a chance to participate. So, CARD. Many of you, I'm sure, have folks tuned in to the webinars, have folks tuned in to the board meetings. Who's attending board meetings right now and virtually? Raise your hand. That's great to see. I'm gonna tell you something, if you are interested in coming into this space and participating in this industry and you're not attending our board meetings, you are missing your opportunity. Every step that we take, every meaningful action that we take has to go through our board. And so all of it happens at that board meeting. It may seem a little boring sometimes, but it is really the place to get information as quickly as it's happening. I want to encourage everybody as well. I'm going to do it now, and I'm going to do it on the back end as well, to sign up for updates at cannabis.ny.gov so that you know when our board meetings are happening, because they're not really on a set schedule just yet, as we're trying to continue to build and push and get the rules out for the program. So, CARD, Conditional Adult Use Retail Dispensary Program. As Ruben highlighted, what we're doing through the financing is identifying these locations, getting ahead of having entrepreneurs being forced into the position of not being able to get into leases, and so having the state or subsidiaries sign the lease for them, doing the build out, doing the design for them so that they have a turnkey operation. the licensing program that is tied to the investment program we call the Conditional Adult Use Retail Dispensary Program. It's going to provide entrepreneurs who have some experience owning or operating a business, as well as who have experienced marijuana prohibition head on by being justice involved, and a first mover advantage and opportunity to participate in the program. Now I want to say this, and I know folks are wondering why we're acquiring this business experience, and it's because of what is also demanded of us as an agency and as a people here that are committed to seeing this thing work. In that legislation, it is not just the mandate for us to build an equitable and diverse industry, but it's also to generate revenue. Why? Because 40%, and thanks to our leaders, Assemblymember Crystal Peoples-Stokes and Senator Liz Kruger, 40% of that revenue that's being generated is going back to communities like West Harlem. Folks that have been impacted and used. Absolutely. And that those resources are going to be used to create reentry programs, job training, adult continuing education programs, community service programs, youth serving programs, other economic development projects. And so we want to get this industry rolling, but we also want to generate some revenue to do so. Additionally, the revenue that's generated from these early first pioneer entrepreneurs is going to be used to reinvest in future entrepreneurs and incubation and development and training. And so we're leaning on the folks who have that business experience, who already gone out and done it, who developed that tenacity, that tough skin of being an entrepreneur in the city and the state of New York, to help be the first to roll this thing out. And so that's why we've emphasized that business experience. And of course, we know, as the law states, that those who've been impacted must go first. And that's why those are the criteria for the card opportunity. What I want to remind folks, this is just a small segment of the retail opportunities that we're going to be rolling out. And so if you don't fit that definition exactly, hold on, wait. We're drafting regulations right now and are looking to advance additional licensing windows for the rest of the licensing dispensary opportunities that we're going to have later this year, probably towards the early part of next year or the end of this year. And so right now, the office is hard at work. Our team, I've been building a team. It went from a staff of one to now almost 100 individuals located across the state of New York that are working to craft the regulations for this program. And it's going to continue to grow. But while we're crafting, we're also continuing to move forward by advancing strategies like the Seeding Opportunity Initiative that's going to make sure that our entrepreneurs here in New York have a real, meaningful chance to participate, and they're not watching as the larger corporations who've normally dominated this space get to run out and roll out the program with them being left behind in the dust. And so that's a little bit about CARD. We have a webinar currently posted on cannabis.ny.gov if you're interested in learning more. I sat at my desk for like 45 minutes and just talked at the camera, so let me know if it gets a little boring. But it's got all the information that you need there to learn about eligibility, about some of the paperwork that is required for you to start to prepare. We are in this review, we're evaluating individuals not just for their checking the eligibility of justice involvement, owning, operating a business, but how well they operated that previous business. Do you have the paperwork and all the other documents required to show and demonstrate your success as a business operator? So if you know somebody who's themselves were impacted by marijuana prohibition, by a conviction, or their parent, their spouse, or their child or dependent, and they also operate a business, a small business in the state of New York, or at least one that has some type of connection here to the state of New York, you need to let them know about this opportunity, because we need them to win. We need them to win to generate that revenue for the rest of the program that we're trying to build out, okay? So I want to stop there and kick it back to Ruben.
I want to make one quick comment. I just listening to you, I want to get a little wonky for a second on what this program really is. So as part of this identification of retail dispensary locations, we started with a geo map of the state with 10,000 potential locations to sell cannabis. We looked at across the country where successful retail dispensaries, where they're located, who they're co-located with, what kind of traffic flow, what kind of demographics they were located in, and we started mapping the state of New York. That narrowed it down to about 1,000 locations in the state of New York. We then took that information and started looking at phone data and other data for people who had either bought cannabis legally in other states or fit a certain demographic, narrowed down even more traffic flow, inflows and outflows throughout the state. We've now identified 265 excellent locations to sell cannabis. We now have people on the ground in those 265 locations trying to find specific opportunities to sign leases. on anywhere from 2,500 to 4,000 square feet, with 3,000 square feet being the sweet spot. We're going to sign leases, 10 years. We're going to build out those spaces, finance the capital over a 10-year period of time. Barrington's in the business a long time, knows getting that done at a 7 to 8% interest rate is almost unheard of. So that when it's time for these dispensaries to be operational, not only will they be physically beautiful spaces that are secure and have all the great bells and whistles, they're going to be in the 150 best locations in the state of New York to sell cannabis. Places where people have foot traffic, or if you're up in up in Albany or Rochester, the outflow is going home from work. We're trying to find spaces that really fit. So we're doing a whole statistical analysis that, quite candidly, most individual entrepreneurs couldn't do that work themselves. They may think they have a nice location, but it costs money to do all this geo mapping and all those locations. So we're doing all that work up front to make sure that these first 150 locations, Chris, are great locations for retail dispensaries, and we'll build the rest of the industry around that work we've done. So I just want to add that, that piece.
Of course. And I want to emphasize too, and as was said earlier, this is an experiment, right? No state has committed this much upfront to see these entrepreneurs succeed. No state has said that the first people to sell cannabis in their state must have been impacted by Prohibition. We've done that. We've taken that step. We've demonstrated that commitment, and we'll continue to do so. But we right now have comments open. The comment period is still open. These regulations are still in draft form, but our comment period is open. If you have comments, please send them to regulations@ocm.ny.gov, and you can find all that information on our website. And again, I'm encouraging folks to really tap in. Do not be behind and waiting, thinking that you're going to hear about this opportunity from somebody else. Go do the work yourself. Cannabis.ny.gov. Sign up for updates so you can hear everything that office is doing.
One last point,
Please.
because I can't let you go without giving praise to our governor, who
Yes,
also
yes.
has been very supportive of us. Not only was she committed to putting the money in the budget to do this, she also has allowed Chris and his team and the board to do the work they need to do without interference, without oversight, in a way that would be draconian. And so she really deserves a lot of credit for seeing the vision and accepting what we've been talking about from an industry perspective and saying, you guys go do it, make it happen, make us proud. So I just want to make sure we highlight the governor.
Absolutely.
Amen there. Just to piggyback a little bit on what Ruben said, is as I started to learn more about this space, and I'm still learning a lot myself, is that the real estate is such a big part of it. In so many other markets, the real estate is oftentimes becomes one of the many barriers, including financing. But being able to remove that hurdle and assist people with identifying high value real estate, and then being able to facilitate their entering those spaces is, from what I understand from people in the space, I've talked to some of you, Damian was one of the first people who told me this is one of the most valuable things that we can do for people. So I'm really, I just want to echo kind of my appreciation for the fact that our state is doing that. So thank you for that. I wanted to make two quick notes. One is that if you have questions, we're holding them for at the end of the entire conversation. Keisha, who's right here, and Jory, who is up there on the other side, are going to be coming up and down either side with cards and pens. So if you have questions, please raise your hands. And you've got Jory, one down here, two down here. So if you have questions, please raise your hands for Keisha and Jory. They will take and give and take the cards for you. We have so much to cover tonight. There are so many things, elements of this business or so many areas of expertise that you really need to have in order to enter and be successful in this space. The next of which is around the legal space. And so I wanted to acknowledge and welcome Tamika Saul from Columbia to start to talk to us a little bit about the clinics that they have here at Columbia and how they help entrepreneurs in the area, as well as, well, I'll let Tamika cover all the ground that she's going to cover, but I know that the entrepreneurship, legal, et cetera. So with that, Tamika, please go at it.
Thank you, Keisha. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, great. So good evening, everyone. My name is Tamika Saul, as Keisha said, and I'm the staff attorney for the Entrepreneurship and Community Development Clinic at Columbia. On behalf of the Entrepreneurship Clinic Director, Lenise Panson, who's up there, and the Criminal Defense Clinic's Director, Amber Baylor. I just want to welcome you to our campus and also applaud you for taking the first step in learning about this exciting opportunity. So I'm really here to talk to you about our legal clinic and how we might help you if you are granted or even thinking about applying for one of the conditional adult use licenses. So first I'll just tell you a bit about our clinic. We're a student-run pro bono clinic that's based out of Columbia Law School. Our students are very passionate about helping entrepreneurs tackle transactional legal issues. Amber, Lenise, and I also on a personal level are very much committed to helping justice-involved individuals, underrepresented entrepreneurs, and really as a bonus, promoting economic development in Harlem. So at this point, I'm sure after you've heard all of these speeches that you might be ready to take the leap, learn more about the program, and you know you're gonna need a lawyer. So you're probably wondering, what can the clinic actually do for you? So you're in luck, I have a list, and it's not expansive. There's many things that we can do, but here are just some examples. So one, let's say you realize you're eligible to apply for a license. We can help you navigate the application process and also just understand it. It's a very dense regulatory space, and we are good at helping folks understand those things. Number two, if you are granted a license, we can also help you understand what your rights and your obligations are under that license, because you'll be working with New York State, right, is my understanding. And you should know exactly what you're getting into. Number three, if you choose to work with a business partner, in my understanding that's also an option. If you choose to work with a partner, we can help you broker those relationships, document those relationships through contracts so that you feel that it's fair and that also your business interests are being protected. If you choose to go it alone, we can help you form and structure your agreements, your entities in a way that makes sense for you. And number four, in the course of running your business, you'll probably find that you're gonna have to work with a lot of other people, whether it's the folks who are delivering for you, if that's an option, or the men and women who are working with you or under you. And we can help understand those relationships, think through how those things are going to work, and also get them down on paper, which is the most important thing, so that you can rest assured knowing that everyone knows when they're showing up, how much they're getting paid, and what they're supposed to do. So that's it. That's all I have for now, but there's many other ways we help people with trademarks and you name it. So I am really excited for you all, and I hope that there are some future cannabis entrepreneurs in this group. Please stop by our table after the event. We'd love to meet you. And we do not actually take new clients over the summer, but we do start back in the fall. And if you reach out to us, we'll put you on the wait list to be contacted. So just on behalf of Columbia Law, I want to wish you all the best in your emerging businesses. Just want to say this is your right, this is your due, and I truly hope that you all seize the moment. Thank you.
Thanks, Tamika. And again, thank you so much to you and your entire team for accommodating us and really making this space for us all here today. And yes, please, everybody, see her panel. Go out and see her at the table. Hi, Chris. See her at the table because these are invaluable services. You know, this stuff costs money. Obviously, attorneys bill at very expensive rates. So if you can get the assistance from Tamika's from the clinic, that would be it's a huge lift. Next up, I wanted to shift the other area. Another area that's a major obstacle for a lot of people is financing these businesses. And so next up, we are blessed to hear from Barrington Rutherford, former senior vice president of Crespro Labs, who will talk to us about financing and equity. Before I pass it off to you, though, Barrington, I want to make sure that I thank Jesse Campoamor. I forgot to do this earlier. I apologize. Jesse Campoamor of Campoamor and Sons, as well as who's holding Co., who has been invaluable to us in helping us make connections in the space and helped secure several of our panelists tonight. So with that, including Barrington, Barrington, please have at it.
Thank you. So I'm not going to talk very long because I was really excited to see the number of note cards that were handed out, the indication that there are lots of questions here. I think it was funny. I wanted to respond to things that Chris and Ruben were saying as they were speaking earlier. I think there's some really important points to highlight. Number one, that the question that Ruben sort of posed rhetorically, is this going to be like other government programs? And I can tell you that having operated in the cannabis industry for a number of years and having experienced 10 regulatory regimes in the various states where I've operated, there is nowhere in the country that is anywhere like what is happening in New York today. The regulators here are moving incredibly quickly, but I think more importantly, incredibly thoughtfully as they design programs that overcome some of the hurdles that trip up entrepreneurs, that trip up even sometimes very well-capitalized entrepreneurs in other markets. And so the thoughtfulness around the programs that are actually really targeted to help most, and really targeted to get doors open by people who have been most directly impacted on the front end of the program is truly groundbreaking. There's no program, no matter how sort of liberal you might have heard or progressive, markets like Oakland, California, or even the state of Illinois, no one has been this thoughtful on the front end about making sure that this opportunity is available to you as the people here running the Office of Cannabis Management and the Cannabis Control Board. Capital, this is a very capital-intensive industry. There's no two ways about that. And so what's special about what the regulators are doing here is that they're taking some of that capital, those capital requirements sort of off the table for you now, and they're shouldering it for you and giving you the best opportunity to be successful. Entrepreneurship is hard. It's hard under the best conditions. And in the cannabis industry, this very capital-intensive industry where capital is also just very difficult to acquire, very expensive, having timely and cost-effective capital that is, and frankly, patient capital, right? So it's there when you need it, but it's not banging on the door when, too soon. I think it's just an incredibly important opportunity. If you don't qualify for these early programs, then I think, you do have to think about the entry into this industry in a more sort of traditional way. I think that, it's important to note that the first step in getting into the cannabis industry is licensing. It's the role that Chris and Ruben are being so thoughtful about today. But the second thing, the most important and the most difficult process that you will find is around real estate. The most capital-intensive part of the cannabis industry is in real estate. It's real estate and construction. It's real estate design, construction. It's all of those things. What they described is that they have shouldered on your behalf is exactly the system that the largest and most successful multi-state operators in the cannabis industry, it's exactly the way those companies look at real estate. It's exactly the way they select. They do this geo-mapping of the state. And that process is unbelievably expensive. It takes a lot of people. It takes a lot of technology to get that right. And so that they are doing this for you and laying this out is just an unbelievable advantage. But again, if you have to do this on your own, The thing to make sure of is that you are being thoughtful about those things on the front end, and the amount of capital that you need to actually get this done and be successful. I think that as you approach today, I'm a professional investor in cannabis, and I think the single most important thing that entrepreneurs have to identify is an answer is, how much do you need, right? Like, we know that it's capital intensive, we know that it's difficult, but your vision for your business requires that you research and be explicit about the amount of capital you need, what you can afford to pay for it, and what you're going to do with it. And so if you're thinking about the less expensive points in the value chain in the cannabis industry generally lean toward retail. They're dispensaries or delivery services and maybe even distribution businesses. The most capital intensive are production. So cultivation, manufacturing, and processing. Those things are if a dispensary can be built out for $125 a square foot or $150 a square foot, cultivation facilities today, large-scale, state-of-the-art cultivation facilities cost $450 a square foot today. And some of these things are being built at massive scale. I'm sure you've seen 500,000 square foot or more facilities that are being built in other parts of the country. So I think there's being realistic about what you need in order to execute the vision for the business that you want to be in is incredibly important. I think later, or there's a conversation to be had about business planning and capital planning. Like, it's so critical that you do this work on the front end so that once you are awarded licenses, you're able to raise and attract the types of capital that you need. I think one piece of good news is that costs of capital and availability of capital in the cannabis industry costs of capital are coming down. Availability is going up, particularly in markets like New York. There's a great deal of excitement around the country amongst investors like me and others to get into to get some access to the cannabis industry here. So I don't think that it's as difficult to raise the capital that you'll need. It's just really a matter of whether you're being thoughtful about what those needs are and approaching investors early enough that they can be helpful and supportive. I'm looking forward to the Q&A, so I'll pause there. But I'm really proud of what the regulators here are doing, and I think that the future for the cannabis industry, the adult use cannabis industry in New York, is incredibly bright, both in these very early stage licensing opportunities, but even in future rounds that may have a little less support. I don't know, maybe they'll have less support, but I still think that there's enough sort of excitement from the investor community that there'll be quite a bit of available capital for entrepreneurs in the cannabis industry here.
Thank you, Barrington. Yes. If no one has asked this question on a card, I'm going to ask that we put the question on the card, which is, what are some other than private investors? And how do you access private? How do you access private investors? And B, what are some of the other sources of capital? So that when we get to the Q&A, I want to make sure that question is answered, because I hope that someone out there has that question. With that, I wanted to also just really quickly touch upon something that hasn't been mentioned yet explicitly. This also is a compliment to the Cannabis Control Board and Office of Cannabis Management, which is that they were very thoughtful also about decoupling or delinking the licenses, so that there are many different types of licenses that people can have. You can have one that is considered seed to sale, which is, growing, cultivating, processing, distributing retail all in one. Those are, much more challenging, those tend to be some of the most expensive. You have to be, kind of the largest players in the market in order to have those. But in order to avoid the market being completely dominated by the people who have that kind of access to capital, they've created all these other smaller licenses that enable people to enter the space without having that much of an investment necessary. So a couple are retail, and the way the regulations are written, some of these licenses, you can own one but not the other, so you can't play in both spaces. So for example, retailers cannot have a delivery license, is that right? Correct? So I think that personally, the delivery license sounds really exciting to me because it removes so much of the overhead. It's kind of like becoming Uber Eats, but for cannabis. Oh, and Uber Eats can't be in the space, for which we can talk about later. So I just wanted to flag the fact that, go to their websites, check out what all the different licenses are, because there are so many different types of opportunities in terms of licensing. You don't have to be a retailer or a distributor, et cetera, in order to be successful in the space. And with that, I will unlock my phone and introduce the next speaker. Of course, the next speaker, I'm so excited, is Damian. Damian Fagan, who, as I mentioned before, is on the board of the New York Cannabis Growers and Processors Association. As I said, he has several different hats that he wears. He teaches at Medgar Evers. He is a hemp grower himself, and we asked him to come speak about the perspective of being an experienced grower. But if there's anything else that you'd like to chime in on that you've heard, that please feel free, Damian, as well. Thank you.
Cool. Hey, can everybody hear me? I'll be quick. I'll just talk about a few insights I've gathered in the cultivation space over the last 6 months. So we just actually had our last class at Medgar Evers. It was a cannabis cultivation class, college accredited, the first one in the city, and it was at an HBCU. It took a lot of advocacy to make sure that class happened, but some of the takeaways, I'll just talk about some of the takeaways of that class, because ultimately I got into cannabis because I'm passionate about black farming, black agriculture. It's something that we used to do a lot of in this country, and do less in the Northeast and in big cities. But I see cannabis very much as a gateway to getting our young people involved in agriculture and farming again. I fell in love with farming through growing cannabis. It's a beautiful process, growing cannabis from start to finish, managing a greenhouse. And so, when I go to Medgar Evers and when I do a lot of my advocacy work, it's about thinking about how to make that process more accessible to folks in the city, and folks from the most harmed communities as well. And so, some insight from these kids are all graduating Medgar Evers right now. I would say half of them want to go into cannabis. Of the 15 students, half of them have their pharmacy job lined up. They're going to be a nurse. They've got something they're going to go do. They just wanted to learn about cannabis to kind of supplement what they were already going to go do. The other half, 2 students are going upstate this summer to do an intensive farming apprenticeship at Soul Fire Farms, which is a black-owned, nonprofit in the Finger Lakes, I think, that does farm training. So they're actually going to go learn how to be farmers. 3 other students are legacy growers, and I say that they grow cannabis at home. And one of them now, who's probably the most talented grower I've met in a while in the city, he is really interested in continuing his studies, and he's talking to Cornell because they have a graduate program that does cannabis and hemp. And so I use these examples just to kind of talk about, these students were never allowed or never had the opportunity to be exposed to cannabis cultivation in regular and academic setting, speak to a professor or who's grown cannabis before. And in just that one class, you see like half the class is now kind of transitioning into careers that could potentially lead them towards managing a grow, running their own farm. And so, we're about to launch this $5-10 billion industry. We have taught none of our young people how to participate in it. And that's pretty horrifying to me. I also talk to growers a lot in California because California's cannabis industry is such a mess right now. they're all coming here to grow. And some of them will train our growers as well to grow, but those jobs, they're for us. They're for New Yorkers. And I'm really passionate about I'm really passionate about making sure that the funding is there for the education, because I also work with Black Farmers United of New York State. We meet every 2 weeks to talk about cannabis cultivation opportunities and growing cannabis. These are growers from Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse. They do blueberries. They do a lot of different things, but they're interested in adding cannabis to what they're already doing. And the education really does have to come first, because you can give someone a license to grow cannabis and they will 100% fail if they haven't been properly trained how to do it yet. So education, we can speak on that later, but that's a huge passion of mine in cannabis. The second thing I'll say, there is a community in New York State who knows how to grow great cannabis, and they're in the legacy community. And I have met some kids from the Bronx who are plant scientists. They have a PhD in horticulture. They know more about breeding genetics, tissue culture, things that you have to learn in labs, they learned in apartments in the Bronx. And they haven't been able to share that talent publicly or be proud of it because of the stigma. And I just think that that's a huge loss for the community, huge loss for the city. But I am hopeful that a lot more of them will start coming forward and talking publicly about what they do, and inspiring young people to do the same, because it's nothing to be ashamed of that they grew cannabis. They were providing a need that they saw in the market, and a lot of people needed cannabis in New York, and they did it really well. And a lot of those same people I'm talking to are going to go for licenses. They have the money, they have the capital, they have the training to go for a license, and they'll probably be successful. But they're also our teachers and our educators, and I do hope to activate a lot more of them to start speaking on panels like this about growing cannabis. So, yeah.
All right.
Can I get an amen? And yes, I'm hoping that AU help us identify the ones that are in Manhattan as well, and that we can get, hopefully we can assist as much as we can to get all of them licensed and in businesses that are, I'll just leave it there. Moving on, so this is another part that's super exciting for me, is in terms of the opportunity in this space, which is that one does not have to own a business in order to have opportunity and to benefit from this. When I hear about the opportunities, whether it's working in security or in marketing, there's so many different ways that one can be a part of the cannabis industry in order to benefit from it. And another compliment to the way the New York State regulators have put this together. All of the licensees have to be must have peace agreements with unions. And that means, and that is part of the reason why why companies like Uber Eats will most likely not be entering the space, because they are not particularly union friendly. So with that introduction, I wanted to bring us next to Saul, who is going to be talking about, he, as I said, he is with RWDSU, the lead cannabis organizer, is going to be talking about opportunities to organize as a labor force within the cannabis industry. So Saul, I'll leave it with you there.
Thank you. Hey guys, how are you today? Good evening. Thank you for having me here. This is definitely exciting. I remember some years ago when my boss came to me and said, hey, do you want to be part of the cannabis force? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I thought he was joking. Never in my dreams did I think I was going to be able to participate in this industry in the way that I'm doing it now. And my angle is a little bit different than everybody else on this panel, because everybody wants to get into the space to become entrepreneurs, and that's great. And a lot of people are going to be able to do that, and we're happy to see that. And we definitely, as a brown person, I want to see our communities, be able to participate in this industry fully. I definitely want to see that. But the reality is a lot of people are not going to be able to become entrepreneurs, right? I don't know how many licenses they're going to be able to give out, a couple thousand, maybe a few thousand, I don't know, over years, right? But even then, we have millions of New Yorkers that might want to participate. So our goal has been the other way around. So we've been involved in this for 10 years already. We got involved back in 2012, 2013, before the Compassionate Care Act passed, and we saw the opportunity of a new and emerging industry that could happen, right? And we said, all right, what are we gonna do to make sure that this industry is the right kind of industry? Because we've all seen, as New Yorkers, industry just leave us, right? From upstate, our industries we've lost industry decade after decade for the last 40, 50 years. So this was the opportunity. So we've been very involved in the Compassionate Care Act when it passed back in 2014, signed into law. We were very involved in the MRTA, and our political director, Nikki Cateman, has been living in Albany, making sure that she spoke to elected officials, and we've been pushing, taking members there to lobby to make sure that it passed. And we definitely are very happy to see what's going on right now with the OCM and with the CCB. They're spearheading this in the right way. But on the other end, like they said, every license is going to be tied into a labor peace agreement. And that's for any license. As our colleague said earlier, there's going to be many types of licenses. For any license that you want to apply to, you have to have a labor peace agreement, short, an LPA. And with those, all that means is that the employer is promising neutrality. It means that the workers there are going to have to, or will have the opportunity to choose to join part of the union without all the anti-union efforts that you see in big corporations like Amazon and Starbucks and et cetera. You know the stories already, right? So that's why we're so happy that this piece was incorporated into the law, so there's no loopholes there. They have to have a labor peace agreement which allows us access, right? At this point right now, there is 10 operators of medical cannabis in the state. We now represent 8 of the 10. So 80% of that industry is already unionized industry. So most of the times if you go into a dispensary, you're buying union-made products, and they are seed to sale, right? So we represent the workers that cultivate, that harvest, that extract, that manufacture, that make all the tinctures. Everything that you buy at a legal dispensary right now has been made by union workers, and we're very proud of that. But besides all this piece, right, our job has been to raise the standard. Now, don't get me wrong, these cannabis companies, they've come in and they've offered, decent wages and benefits. But we knew that they could do better, right? And that's been our goal, because we know that hundreds, if not thousands, of our people from our communities are going to be working in these dispensaries, because once all the social equity licenses are out there, we're going to have big business coming here, right? And that's going to be our job. Our job is going to make sure that this big business doesn't just come in and just reap all the benefits, having our New Yorkers working for minimum wage. We're not going to do that, not here. Right, so our contracts, call for $18 to $20. That's the starting rates in our dispensaries, right? Our full-timers get full paid medical, right? That is negotiated into the contract. And I'm not talking about basic medical where your deductible is $3,000, $4,000. I'm talking about medical that you could actually use, right? Because even when you're making $18 to $20 an hour, if your deductible is $4,000, it hurts. Our deductible is $0. Our copay is $10. You see? This is the kind of standards that we're trying to establish in this industry to make sure that it becomes a career for those New Yorkers that can't start a business, for those New Yorkers that want to participate, that want to earn a living, and that they can live in the communities where these dispensaries are starting, right? And besides that, we obviously have, more paid time off, more paid holidays. And obviously, as a union member, they have the protections on the job, right? So they can't just get fired because the boss comes in a bad mood that day. So these are all the things that we're doing. And also, like in most places, when you organize a majority of the industry, the spillover effect is real. In other words, other cannabis companies, as they come in, they start to already improve their benefit package to try to avoid workers joining the union. So that already starts to happen. But that's fine. That means that what we're doing is working. That means that what we're doing is helping workers even if they're not in the union. And that's what it's all about. Our union's motto is stronger together. So we feel that all cannabis workers in New York State will be stronger if they're with the union. For those people that do want to be entrepreneurs and that need a labor peace agreement, I have a flyer that I could give to you outside. Also, you could go on to cannabislpa.com. That is a website that we've created to make it easy for you to contact us. Once you go onto the website, you could just fill out a very quick 2-minute form. It has your first name, last name, et cetera, and we'll send you the LPA. It's a 1.5-page document. You sign it, we sign it, and you have one. It's, it's our regular language. We've used it with all of the big ROs that are already here, And we've used it right now for a whole bunch of the people that have already gotten the provisional licenses here in the state. As Mark said earlier, most states have failed. For us, unionization is the answer to social equity. Once again, we're going to make sure that these are careers for people that work in the industry, that people can raise a family on these, that people can take their kids to the doctor and not be scared of coming home with thousands of dollars of medical bills. That's our goal. This is what allows us, to feel happy. Like, I'm super excited about the work that I've been doing. I've been now doing this, traveling the whole state, organizing workers from here to Buffalo to Plattsburgh, and I really enjoy doing it. I enjoy getting to know all these workers, getting to hear their stories, getting to see that once they start to make our wages and our and our salaries, they're now buying homes upstate and they're buying new cars, and it's just like a life change, right? So that makes us very proud to the work that we've been doing. And the last thing I just wanted to do, just real quickly, wanted to take a quick second to send my prayers to Texas, to Buffalo. I know that we haven't mentioned it today, and maybe it's not the right venue, but my heart is aching as a parent. Today, I haven't been able to be okay. I'm still very distraught when I dropped off my 6-year-old today in the morning. I didn't want to leave him, So I know that we all probably feel the same way. Just want to keep them in our prayers, and I hope that the people in DC finally do something, because this is enough. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Saul. I will pause for a second and just say that our whole office was struggling today as well. I'm a parent as well, and the frustration that I feel is immeasurable. Frankly, how this continuance of violence is acceptable to half of our Senate, and how they impose that on the rest of the country repulses me and upsets me deeply. So thank you, Saul, for lifting those families up and speaking about what needs to happen. Next up, wanted to, and thank you everybody for your questions. I'm seeing some of them come in. I'm really looking forward to getting to them. But before we do that, wanted to bring up Jory Francois, who you heard from earlier and who's been collecting all your questions, who's going to be talking about employment opportunities and career services that are available through the New York Urban League.
Thank you, Keisha. Other Keisha. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, thank you for being with us here tonight. We know this is a critical conversation about the opportunities that are being extended to us, our communities, and the impact that it can have for us moving into the future. Planning with the team about this event, I stopped and I said to myself, well, maybe I need to think about entrepreneurship, right? I don't quite qualify because I know that I haven't been directly impacted, but it was really important for us to open up this space because we know that we are the conduits of our community, right? What we learn here tonight, we hope will not stay here tonight, and that we'll continue to share this information so that we can bring somebody along with us, right? Opening a door is the first step. Bringing someone along with you is also the second step. We heard from the executive director to attend board meetings, get involved, right? We want to hear your voices now. We heard from Columbia Law School. We have the opportunity to help you to write that business plan. We have the opportunity to help you craft your organizational structure. We heard about the pitfalls of equity, capital, real estate licensing. And so we want to be able to take that information, actualize it. But to the folks sitting in the room who had the same feeling as me, well, maybe I don't quite fit. Maybe I don't yet qualify. We know now is the time to get engaged, to get active, and to use these resources in order to be prepared for that opportunity. And so forgive me, I get really excited. I'm here at the New York Urban League under the direction and the vision. This year is our reunion year. We want you to get connected to these resources. We want to support you to achieve your highest self and to live the life of, as a New York City resident, that you would have to do so. And so I'm going to talk briefly about some of our programs at the New York Urban League that we have to support entrepreneurs, that we have to support Black businesses, as well as some of the opportunities that you can take advantage of right now. I know that I'm not an entrepreneur. I like coming to work from 9 to 5 for my boss. And we know that Black and brown businesses continue to employ overwhelmingly Black and brown individuals from our communities, as well as those of us who are returning citizens. And so on behalf of the, I'll start with our employment and career services, we are committed to the work of breaking down barriers for those of us who have been convicted, incarcerated, and are returning to the employment career journey, right? And so it was important for us to share that you may not have all the parts and the pieces that you need to apply for one of these licenses today, but we're prepared to work with you in order for you to get to that point. And so if that's interview preparation, if that's connecting you to felon-friendly businesses, if that's helping you to develop your plan that you will intentionally submit to one of these agencies, one of these organizations, one of these bodies, the New York Urban League is here in partnership, and we want you to get connected, right? We also support our small businesses through our Small Businesses Solution Center. And so Tamika shared a lot about the resource clinic that you can sign up for in the fall, but I'm here to tell you that our doors are open as of tomorrow, right? And so we offer services, we partner with lawyers, we partner with marketing, promotions, and offer the supports that we know that Black and brown businesses appreciate and value and help you scale up your businesses. We talked a little bit about equity and capital funding. We are committed through our Communities of Color Nonprofit Stabilization Fund, where we support Black and brown businesses in achieving their goals and their dreams. And finally, like I said, for those of us who would like, who are returning home, whether that's returning from the prison pipeline system, whether that's returning after being unemployed or furloughed from COVID-19, whether that's our returning women returning back to the workforce after having to stay at home for child care. We want to support you in that transition back into the workforce, and we also want to bring in the community as well. While you may not be the conduit to entrepreneurship or a license, we know that we affiliate with organizations that support our community, right? So we know that the faith-based community supports individuals who have been impacted by the legal criminal justice system. So if that's an opportunity for you to bring in that community to take advantage of these opportunities, the New York Urban League is here with you in partnership. We're excited to talk more about your individual circumstances when we get to our resource fair. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it back over to Ms. Keisha Sutton James to facilitate our Q&A.
All right, folks, we have some awesome questions, and I'm really thrilled about this. All right, first question. I have been convicted. My partner has run a business. Can we apply for a license together? Chris Rubin, I think that sounds like for you.
So I would say one thing as I answer questions about the draft regulations, whether it's a question or a comment, I'm urging you strongly to submit written questions and comments through the regulations at ocm.ny.gov email so that your comments and thoughts are not lost. So I'll respond, but just want to make sure that you also take that follow-up step so that we don't lose that input that you're able to provide today. So the answer is it depends. If the partner if there is some type of legal union, and if the partner and if the conviction happened prior to March 31st, 2021, and the partner who owns and operates a business and there's a legal union has operated that business for a minimum of 2 years and has demonstrated ownership of at least 10% in that business, then potentially yes. But again, I really want to focus folks to the regulations themselves. The draft regulations are posted on our website. But I do believe that there's at least the conviction requirement that happened before the Marijuana Regulation Taxation Act was enacted on March 31st, 2021, that the ownership in the business was at least at the 10% level, and that there'd be some legal union relationship there.
Very helpful. And as a follow-up question there, how do I prove that I'm justice involved?
That's a great question. So, really the proudest day of my professional life happened 2 times. One is in 2019 when we passed a decriminalization statute that also created expungement in the state of New York. That didn't happen outside and separate from marijuana reform advancing. So on that day, we expunged almost 200,000 convictions. And then with the passage of the legalization bill, we expunged another 200,000. That's 400,000 convictions that have been expunged due to the advocacy around marijuana reform that I'm incredibly proud of the work that advocates have done on that space. That being said, even though we have expunged convictions, folks are still able to access those records, only they themselves. They have to go to the court of conviction in order to do so. And so if you were convicted in, Manhattan Criminal Court or wherever, I mean, you have to go to the court of conviction to retrieve that documentation, and it'll be presented in the form of a certificate of disposition. There are some other forms of evidence that we will be accepting. We'll be providing tips as the application is rolled out of alternative documentation that we'll be accepting.
Hi, I'm back.
Yes.
And we have another really important question on capital, which is very simple. Barrington, we may be asking for you to help on this. How much money do I need? Very simple. How much does it take? Ballpark. And maybe you can also elaborate on sources of this capital.
It's a fair question. It's difficult to answer. So if let's say you want to open a dispensary business, and let's assume that you are not eligible for the programs that Chris and Ruben have described today. So in, say, call it some future round, or in some other state, frankly, where this sort of support, these like very thoughtful programs don't exist, I would say that the cost of opening a dispensary is on average around $1 million. It can be done for less. There are those who have done it for substantially less, and I've seen some that cost 12. I've opened one that cost $10 million, in fact. But
Was that
I would say
gold-plated faucets and stuff?
well, no, it included very, very expensive real estate. But I would say that on average, to open a dispensary, the cost without any sort of external support is around $1 million. It's easy to tell you that to open a new dispensary, debt by way of any sort of bank loan or SBA loan is not available. Large institutions don't provide capital into the cannabis industry. So generally, you're sourcing private capital. There are a number of investors. They are not hard to find. You'll look them up on the internet, and there are a number of investors that will invest into early stage cannabis businesses. But the caveat here is to use the phrase that Ruben said earlier. The capital is often not cost effective. It can often be very expensive. So I think that you can do yourself a favor by, if there's the opportunity to seek private investment, friends and family that you might know who are interested in, I think generally like the first step of an effective capital raise is in the network of people who you know, who trust you, and who really want to invest in your success. That's going to be the most timely and cost-effective and patient capital that you'll find. I think the next stage, when you go out and you start looking at professional investors or whether they be sort of private equity or venture capital, I think that comes next. I think your first step is to look within your own network if you are not eligible for these unbelievably supportive programs that the state is advancing. If you are, then you should not delay. You should certainly try to participate in these programs if there's any path possible for you to be eligible in any of those programs. They're that meaningful that you should not overlook an opportunity, a possibility of being licensed and participating in those programs.
Yeah, I just want to say, is my mic on?
Yeah.
For cultivation, something to consider. This is happening right now with the hemp farmers, and I know this because I'm working with a couple black farmers who have the conditional cultivation license to raise money. We can grow outside in New York State. I mean, the hemp farmers have started doing that. That drastically lowers the cost of getting into the cultivation space. You can build a hoop house and grow outside on an acre for $50,000, maybe less than that if you're efficient with your time. But a big part of why cultivation isn't accessible to a lot of folks in other states is because they're required to grow indoors. They're required to build these facilities that cost $400 per square foot. But New York was smart in putting sun-grown outdoor cannabis at the forefront. I've managed a hoop house in South Carolina that grew cannabis. It was $20,000 to do that, to get started in that. And I want to point that out because it is unique to New York. Like Massachusetts does not have outdoor cultivation. Vermont doesn't have outdoor cultivation. We will. And so obviously, if we're talking about now, we're looking at next year's growing season. But I anticipate a lot of black growers getting into the space, growing outdoors in the next growing season.
I'll just add an editorial statement that $1 million is insurmountable for many potential entrepreneurs, including people who have all the skills that they need to succeed. And I think we as policymakers, in a world in which the SBA is not going to be there and traditional sources won't be there necessarily, we have to find alternative sources. We have to really come up with a way so that that cannot be the barrier that stops people. Yes?
Yeah, I just want to add, a real big shout out to the law clinic here, because, what we'll find and what we often find is even if, as we've been identifying these barriers to entry and trying to remove them bit by bit, one thing that was a barrier to entry in our own medical program at the start was the cost of, that application and the cost of eventually securing licensure. So, we've dropped all those licensing costs, but the moment that a license is then awarded, the vultures will come. And so I think it's really important that we have, particularly those in the legal field who care about seeing this program work and care about building generational wealth for communities who've been left out and left behind. There's going to be a lot of work to make sure that folks aren't entering into these predatory deals where they're giving away all that they have for a little bit of cash up front. And so that's something that's a big concern of ours that we are trying to police as best we can, but that we won't be able to fully and entirely protect folks who are stepping into the space. So it's just something that I think folks can really tap into if you are a lawyer or somebody who provides some type of legal service.
I think the other thing I would just add, Borough President, the reason that our program, on the first card program, is so important is that, let's use $1 million as a number. We need $1 million to start the business. Of that, probably half that is going to be in the capital to build out your dispensary business. There'll be some money required for financing inventory so that you can get your product in work. And it's a working capital. So if you raise that $1 million with traditional venture capital, you're paying 30 to 40% return on the full $1 million of your capital stack. And there will be some very stringent requirements and covenants for both qualifying and to the extent that you don't meet certain criteria, you will lose parts of your business. So what we've done with this program is we've said we're going to take the first part, the $500,000 off the table. We'll finance that for you at 8% over a 10-year period of time. There'll be no personal guarantees, no credit. That's $500,000 on $1 million piece. Most people could find good inventory capital once they get these operations up and running. So that financing's there. It's that working capital now it becomes a more manageable number of $250,000 to $300,000. So even if you're going to a venture capitalist at that point, you're comparing a cost of capital of 30% for $200,000 to $300,000 versus 30% for $1 million. We look at these businesses, look at pro formas, that is a huge difference in your ability to effectively run a business. And as Chris has mentioned earlier, this is the first of many programs, but we are well aware of the fact that capital, cost of capital, timely capital is important, and we're working to do everything we can make sure we can do to assist our social equity entrepreneurs, make sure that is not an impediment.
Wow, incredibly helpful. So our next question is very simple but important. I was convicted at the federal level. Can I apply for this first round?
Unfortunately, New York State's program is working to correct and undo the harm that's been done in the state. And so those federal convictions do not qualify as marijuana-related offenses under our proposed regulations.
So that would be the next round for...
Yeah, and of course, and again, as we keep talking about this, and I want to correct some of the statements, the don't qualify language, CARD is a tiny program, right? And so again, the criteria for the remainder of the licenses, and of course, not just we're talking dispensary operations a lot, but not just dispensary business, but cultivation, processing, delivery, et cetera, it will be very different, right? It won't have that same requirement of justice involvement, et cetera. Now, we will still work to prioritize folks who have that involvement and who otherwise, wouldn't have the opportunity. We'll still work to prioritize, make sure they have space, but that won't be a requirement. So moving forward, you might not, qualify for this card program here, but when we open further dispensary rounds or other licensing rounds, everybody qualifies, unless there's a small population that doesn't. But that's a more technical response there.
That is a perfect lead into the next question, which is after the first round, after the card round, how do we maintain equity for our community when we're competing for licenses with big businesses? You touched on it, but please elaborate.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. I mean, as I said, and as we've been, reiterating constantly, this is just the start. This is just the first program. And so priority, the language in the statute demands that this office and this board provide priority in all forms, priority to folks who qualify as minority women-owned businesses, who qualify as distressed farmers, who qualify as service-disabled veterans, or folks who have been justice involved. And so that priority, and we're taking the broadest definition of it. What does it mean? It means everything. First to participate in programs that we're providing, but also, priority review and licensure. And so you're competing, of course. There's always going to be that competition, but what we are trying to do is ensure that there's a chance and ensure that there's a meaningful opportunity. And so our broad reading of the word priority as it's written in the statute, we believe will allow us to continue to advance our equity entrepreneurs into the space and ensure that we meet the goal that is in the statute of 50% of our licensees across all license types being what we call equity entrepreneurs.
Okay.
I also think it's important to note that the legislation itself structurally assists that priority.
Absolutely.
So as an example, no one can own more than 3 retail dispensaries, which means that some of the major companies, like in California, they may own 100 to 150 dispensaries. That's just not good business in New York. So it really is a small business entrepreneurial piece we're putting together. On the delivery side, you only have 25 drivers. So that takes out the Uber Eats and the Amazons and others of the world, So I think structurally we've done that work, and I just got to compliment Chris and his team. They've taken that structure and put it into regulation. And I think that's going to be very important to the success.
Excellent. So here's a question. I have a creative cannabis infusion idea. How much flexibility does licensure offer?
Well, it depends, and I don't want to be the only one up here taking all these questions. It depends on the business. And what I would say, of course, not to provide direct advice, but to stay tuned to the regulations. So to give an example of what I mean by it depends, are you creating a baked good or a good that's shelf stable and that can be stored, et cetera? That might be a processing license, right? Where you're in the work of taking the extracted cannabis product and taking the extracted and creating a new cannabis product. That might be a processor license. But we also have other potential license types that might carry that activity. But generally, yes, there should be some space for that type of activity in the industry.
That is good. Is there a youth entrepreneurship program in the works? How to ensure that this does not negatively impact youth?
Youth entrepreneurship program, I mean, the worker development programs that we're doing in partnership with our state partners at Department of Labor, as well as other partners and the unions as well, to make sure that we're certifying and making sure that we have a strong workforce in the cannabis space is important. And I believe 18-year-olds can participate, although they cannot be involved in something that's plant touching. But I think the biggest thing for us is education. What's happening right now is so important because while you all are here hearing about the industry, you're also becoming folks who have now removed the stigma that's been laden in all of our minds around cannabis. And so we all become then, we all get our soapbox on being able to properly educate our young people. We are currently running a public education campaign, the first of its kind in the nation, our Cannabis Conversation series, where we're targeting messages directly to young people to let them know that we didn't legalize for folks under the age of 21, and that's for a particular reason, because cannabis can impact the growing brain. And so, we are trying to meet them with fact-based education on a daily basis. But I think it's also true, the changing of the environment around cannabis that I think is going to have the biggest impact. But on the worker side, I believe 18-year-olds can come into those development programs that we're working on, not younger than that. And hopefully, as we continue to break stigma, we'll create more programs that folks can filter into.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to quickly shout out, was just yesterday, there's a group, I'm blanking on the name, I'll remember it after the panel, but they go directly to schools and talk to the parents of the schools about cannabis. I was on a panel with one yesterday in Brooklyn, and a bunch of parents showed up, had questions about what's about to happen with cannabis. They answered them, talked about it, and I feel like that is a way to really facilitate what's about to happen in New York, because things are about to change with cannabis. It's going to look a lot different, and parents are a demographic that need to be reached out to.
We only have about 6 minutes left. We have a great individual resource assistance segment coming up, so we do want to get to that. But I have more questions. We'll try and get to as many as we can. How do we ensure safety when establishing these businesses, since they're cash-based? Safety is a large concern, especially if you are a woman.
So a couple things. One is statistics show that a neighborhood that has a dispensary, crime goes down by 20%. Why is that? Because there's a lot of security that is built into regulations around the dispensaries themselves. Second, from a stigma perspective, people on the negative side of cannabis talk about what a bad thing it is and the drugs and all these things, and try to create this environment around cannabis as being something negative. Other states have legalized it. They're beautiful, well-lit buildings with easy access, good parking, good security inside and out. But also, as we're developing these dispensaries, the first 150, we're going to put together a state-of-the-art exterior security package so that these areas will become just more secure places to be in the city of New York. There'll be more secure places to be around the state, where you have external cameras, lighting, and other features that really make them very, very safe. We also have mechanism now. When the cowboy days of cannabis, it was all cash. We have mechanisms now where the cash is not that big of an issue. There are cashless ATMs, there are drop boxes and other things. So it's not the big cash business that it was at one point. So from an industry perspective, we really addressed a lot of those needs. Other states have led the way and will continue to do that.
Excellent. We've talked mostly about the retail side, but here's a question about cultivation. When will cultivation licensing become available? What support will there be for this side? And specifically, will there be capital support for cultivation?
Yeah, I mean, we're working to generate the same type of supports that we're providing to CARD, to other license types as they advance. We have opened one round of cultivation licensing that Damian mentioned earlier, the adult use conditional cultivation for existing hemp farmers who are already regulated by the state, being able to transition to the adult use side. And so we have done some cultivation licensing. We can look towards the end of the year or the early part of next year for additional licensing rounds as it relates to cultivation and these other license types. But in terms of support, I mean, we are trying to be as creative as possible. So, we're currently building out dispensaries because we knew that was a barrier to entry. And we will be working to provide similar type supports to folks interested in cultivation across the board. I can't speak to it yet because it's not yet decided what that support will be. But part of the mandate in the law is that folks do have access to grants and loans through our office and through our partners at ESD and other entities. And so, we're working to develop that so that we can be a source of capital, that folks don't have to go to, venture firms, et cetera. So we're working on all that right now.
Okay. Here's a question that Roden had talked about a little bit earlier, but maybe you can elaborate. With real estate being such a big factor, is OCM also looking at locations that would be amenable to mom and pops? Retail locations that could be available for new entrepreneurs and the layman who's interested?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, that's as Ruben's pointed out, that's the whole structure of the program. He spoke about the horizontal restrictions, but there's also the prohibition on vertical integration that many of you are aware of, which focuses and forces the creation of small businesses, just like alcohol, right? Where our liquor stores are largely, those mom and pop businesses because they're not allowed to be owned by the conglomerates that are engaged in the production and manufacturing. And so, we have broken up the industry in such a way that will create maximum access for opportunity. and access for participation. So we do believe that there's plenty of space for mom and pop shops. It's unclear yet what additional supports, just like we're doing for CARD, we will provide for those, for additional subsequent dispensaries that come along. But again, as I've been reiterating, this is just the first opportunity. We're going to continue to try to provide creative strategies like CARD for future licensees.
Ruben, did you want to add anything on that? Or we got it. You got it.
I just want to say that as we look at this whole real estate landscape, there will be some facilities that are fairly large and fairly busy, Union Square, Times Square, those natural places you would be. But a lot of the best cannabis dispensaries are 2,000, 2,200 square feet, serving a local community. And one of the beauties of New York, particularly in the city, is you have such a dense population that you can create a great business that doesn't have to be on 125th Street. You can be up at 137th Street and 7th and really have a nice business. And so we're making sure that we have things that are accessible both from a big traffic site, but also smaller. We have just a very local customer base where you can be very successful without the overhead of a very large facility.
We have 2 questions and under 2 minutes. So I'm going to give them both, and maybe you guys can jump in. First, a question about equal share for Native Americans, who are a very important segment of our state and have been left behind and also impacted by the criminalization. And secondly, a more uplifting final question that maybe Damian can weigh in on. What made you interested in the cannabis industry, and where do you see your company in 10 years? So can we hit those 2 very quick?
Yeah, I mean, on the native side, I mean, New York is really not the first again to want to find ways to make sure that that tribal lands have active participation in the space. We are open to collaboration with the tribes across the state and the nations across the state, and ensuring that they have a way to participate. Some of them have already begun. I think there's an interest in making sure that product is tested, et cetera, and so we're working on those collaborations right now. We're having constant conversations with the tribes on a very regular basis. But kick to Damian on the uplifting.
Yeah, cannabis, for me, my family owns a pretty big farm in Jamaica, and I've always looked at cannabis as a solution to a lot of rural poverty in the global south. And so I was doing agriculture and economic development at this school and applying that to a cannabis framework, because I had this vision of growing cannabis on the farm, exporting off the island, bringing money and developing the island. And so I always looked at cannabis not as like, I mean, I love cannabis, but I love economic development and poverty alleviation and opportunity a lot more. I mean, that's what the plant represents to me. It represents opportunity for a lot of different communities, and so that's how I got into it. My business, though, I was a hemp farmer upstate. I think long term, the vision is to be like 50 and growing cannabis on Jamaica by the beach, and exporting it off the island. And yeah, that's where I'm headed, hopefully.
We're going to check in with you in 10 years.
Yeah.
We may visit you, site visit. Can we give this incredible panel a huge round of applause? Oh my gosh. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. And thank you for these great questions. Every question was good. My goodness. To close us out, I'm going to cue Arva to transition us to the next segment. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Before the panelists leave, can we each think about whether you feel comfortable sharing your Twitter account, your email, your Instagram, but if we can start with Sam and come all the way down. If people want to follow up with you, stay connected, whether it's your website, please share with us contact information all the way down the line.
Yeah, Saul, and I can share my my Instagram is personal, so I think that yeah, so I have flyers outside that I'll be handing out. Also, if you're interested in the LPA, cannabislpa.com. But you can follow what we do also at local338.org. You can look at our website there. And if you want to email me directly, I'll give out my cards also. But it's S like my first name, GUERRERO, like my last name, at local338.org is my personal email. But I'll hand out cards. It'll probably be easier.
Yes, same. We also have one pager and cards that we can hand out right outside.
For me, nycgpa.org. We are the biggest cannabis association in the state right now. We're doing a lot of advocacy for small business, entrepreneurs. You can get involved with what we do there. And you can reach me. I talk to entrepreneurs who just want to learn more about the industry pretty much every day now. Damian, Damian, at nycgpa.org.
Ruben.McDaniel at ocm.ny.gov.
All right, cannabis.ny.gov for our website, and want to also pivot and point folks to NYS_cannabis, our Twitter and our Instagram, always posting content that's relevant and helpful.
And our website is parkjordan.com, and my email is my full name, barrington.rutherford@parkjordan.com.
Thank you so very much. And people, that's the most important information you're going to get today. And that is how to follow up with these folks, continue to be educated, continue to ask questions, and to move forward. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Please step outside. There's additional resources for ways that you can continue to learn more. And thank you so much for coming, everybody.
Man, good to see you, man.